Hey, how's it going, everybody? My name is Jason. This is Art of Creation Homestead. I'm out here planting our tomatoes today, and I wanted to give you a really quick, simplified version of everything you're going to need to know before you plant tomatoes. Okay, it's very simple, but you know, if you're planting a garden for the first time, second, third time, whatever, you're still young, still fairly inexperienced and a novice at gardening. Maybe you want a little more understanding. So I'm going to try and do this for you really quickly. Okay, so let's just start off with the first thing is, you're going to see a lot of times you're going to say determinate or indeterminate tomatoes. Okay, determinate tomato, what is that? As I step over a whiskey barrel. Determinate tomatoes are considered things that get to a determined size and set a determined amount of fruit. Those are also more a bushing style tomato plant. They won't get as large, and you won't also get as much fruit necessarily. Okay, they will kind of stall out and stop producing fruit a lot earlier into the season. Okay, but that's normally a Roma style tomato, or a pasting style, which is the next thing. Pasting versus beefsteak style. All right, so a pasting tomato again will be like a Roma. There's an Amish paste, which Amish paste, by the way, is like one of the only, if not the only, indeterminate pasting tomatoes. Okay, so pasting tomatoes are good canners. They're good for making tomato paste. They're also good for, you know, canning and doing tomato sauce and things of that nature. But it doesn't mean you can't use a beefsteak or a slicing tomato for those things. They're also very good for that. A beefsteak tomato, a beefsteak type tomato, is what's going to be typically the big, you know, 12 ounces to a pound or more tomatoes. They're going to have fewer seeds typically. Huge flavor. They're great. They're good meaty tomatoes. Great for slicing, making tomato sandwiches, or putting on your sandwiches, or whatever you want to do with them. But those are the ones that are kind of the more awe-inspiring and beautiful tomatoes. Okay, the ones that people like to show their neighbors. Then the next thing, before we get into planting one, is going to be heirloom versus hybrid. Okay, what's the deal with that? Why is that? What are the differences? Is a hybrid a GMO? Hybrid is not a GMO. Okay, it's not a GMO seed. It's just a cross-pollinated tomato variety that is not stable, that will not reproduce that same tomato with its seeds. Okay, so heirloom versus hybrid necessarily is a big discussion, is a big deal for a lot of gardeners, a lot of tomato enthusiasts. Typically, your heirloom tomatoes will have a more traditional, classic, robust tomato flavor. Okay, I prefer heirlooms, by the way, but the downfall to that is heirlooms are typically more prone to getting diseases, late blight, wilt, things of that nature, and hybrids are typically disease resistant. That's why they've created hybrids, is to make gardening easier. Okay, I guess. But with that hybrid style, you also lose flavor, you gain production. Okay, typically hybrids produce more. Heirlooms do produce a great amount of tomatoes if you're growing them well anyways, so that's a non-issue for me. But you know, hybrids are more disease resistant, though they typically produce more, but they get less flavor, and there's less, how should I say it? There's less artisticness with them, I guess. You know, so heirlooms, again, you can use the seeds again if you keep them away from others. Like if you were to have nothing but Cherokee purple tomato plants out here, then you can't cross-pollinate with another tomato style. Okay, so then its seeds would be stable, and its seeds would be good to use for Cherokee purples again in the future. So that's the deal. Heirlooms can reproduce with their own seeds. Hybrids cannot. Hybrids can produce more and are more disease resistant typically than an heirloom, but there are heirloom varieties that are very disease resistant. Okay, so let's cover planting one. This is the way we prefer. We've had success for 12, 15 years now growing tomatoes. It's worked well for us every year. So this is what we do. All right, I go 2 feet apart. You need some space, because you need root development. You need space for root development, and you also need airflow. Okay, the more airflow you can have between your tomato plants, the less likely you're going to have developing a blight, an early season or late season blight, either one. That is, again, the #1 enemy of heirloom tomatoes, and it's avoidable if you prune correctly when growing, but also if you space them correctly to start with. Okay, spacing's a big deal. They actually recommend 3 feet, or but 2 to 3 feet. A lot of people go 3 feet. We're going to go 2 feet. This is just because we need space. So 2 feet's good enough. So I always measure out. I'm very precise with it. I always measure out. So here's 2 feet. You dig a hole. Okay, what you need to do though is you get in here and you need to plant good and deep. All right, this is a big deal. Tomatoes need a good depth. All right, so now when we plant, we get down there. Now we have 2 things we do in the hole. Okay, we don't use all fertilizers in the hole. We can, you can certainly can. It's fine to put all your fertilizers in the dirt with it, but and by the way, we've done it both ways. But first of all, we use our eggshells. Okay, these are our eggshells from our backyard chickens that we've saved over the course of time. Basically, we just wash them out with hot water, let them dry out, and crush them up. Okay, so we've done that, and we're going to put blood meal in the dirt with them. That is solely for nitrogen. Now, we don't use as much blood meal because we've put our chicken bedding and leaves and things like that. So we have a lot of organic sources already. So we don't use very much nitrogen, just a splash, okay, for that. Now I'm gonna mix that up with my hand. Okay, mix that up. Now, very important here is planting depth. It's a really big deal for root development, for tomato stability and everything. These are tomato plants we grew ourselves from seed. So put them in there, break the roots just a little bit, and cover, right? Cover deep. Now, you want to make sure it is really deep so that you have a lot of stability. All right, you want a lot of stability there at the bottom, at the base. And now, once you're done with that, for organic gardening, okay, we had the nitrogen in there for growth, but now tomatoes do need a little bit of everything. All right, so we will also, before we water, I'm going to put a little bit of bone meal. Okay, just sprinkle a little bit of bone meal around. We're going to water that in, as well as some kelp meal. So bone meal is for calcium, all right, and for phosphorus. Kelp meal is for potassium. Okay, these are the NPK. This is the 3 things in the fertilizer chart there. NPK. That's what the numbers stand for. Is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Okay, K is potassium. All right, so we do a little bit of that. So kelp meal for potassium, bone meal for calcium, which tomato plants need calcium for fruit development, especially pasting tomatoes. You'll get blossom end rot without that. And so bone meal helps with calcium. Eggshells that we put in there helps with calcium. Bone meal helps with phosphorus, and the blood meal helps for nitrogen. Okay, that's a high nitrogen producer. And then finally, we'll do something a little bit different than maybe other people. A little bit of Epsom salt. Okay, Epsom salt. It sounds crazy, right? This is so crazy, but what it is for a natural source of magnesium. Magnesium helps with blossom set, fruit set, and blossom production in general. Okay, it's very important, and Epsom salt is a good source of it. You water it deep. Okay, water all that in there. Water it deep. Plenty of water. Okay, and to get that tomato plant started off right. Very simple, very effective. So there it is. Simple, effective way. Very easy to plant your own tomatoes and have a great success with tomatoes. And honestly, the better fertilized and the more nutrients are in your soil, the more your tomato plants are able to withstand disease if you're doing heirloom tomatoes like we do. Okay, so hey, my name's Jason. This is Art of Creation Homestead. Appreciate you guys watching. Subscribe to this channel and click the bell for notifications for more of these how-tos and gardening updates. Okay, especially on a small space and in a common backyard. That's what we do. Okay, so thanks for watching. We love you guys, and God bless you, and goodbye.